Good morning and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's powerful webinar. What you need to know to be prepared for a mental health crisis, hosted by the New Jersey Family Engagement Hub. I'm Jeanette Mejias, Program Director of Family Engagement, and it's an honor to facilitate this space where families, educators, and community providers, as well as advocates, come together to explore the urgent realities surrounding mental health. This webinar is more than information. It's a call to action. Whether you're here as a parent, professional, or ally, your presence matters. Together, we're building those bridges of understanding and support. So I want you to take this opportunity to lean in, listen deeply, and lead with compassion. Before I turn it over to the team for their introductions, just a few housekeeping ground rules. Please, we want you to be engaged in the chat, so we'd love for you to introduce yourself, tell us where you're coming from. If you're a parent, a professional, an ally, community provider, we want to hear from you. Also, throughout the presentation, we will be posting information such as links so that you can visit and explore the resources that are shared throughout the webinar. Also, since it's a virtual platform, we appreciate if you would at least hit the reaction button so that the presenter knows that the information resonates with you and it's something that you truly are enjoying. And now, over to Kim.
Thank you, Jeanette. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kim Rivers, and I am the training coordinator for our New Jersey Family Engagement Hub. I am a wife and a mother of 3 now grown kids. So mental health is a journey as a parent that we are always trying to manage. And now I'm going to pass it over to Tara.
Thank you, Kim. Hello, everyone. I'm Tara Semanek, the Southern Regional Family Engagement Specialist for the New Jersey Family Engagement Hub. And I have a young son who is involved in the Children's System of Care mental health support system. And now I'll pass it to Alexis.
Thank you, Tara. Hello, everybody. My name is Alexis Pratt. I am the Community Engagement Specialist for the New Jersey Family Engagement Hub. And now I'll turn it over to Kayari for final introductions.
Thank you, Alexis. Hi, my name is Kayari Tyler. I'm the Virtual Learning Support Specialist. And now I'll pass it back over to Jeanette to continue our presentation.
Thank you, Kayari. Thank you, team. So who are we? The New Jersey Family Engagement Hub, we're a statewide initiative dedicated to strengthening partnerships between families, schools, and communities. As an affiliate of SPAN, Parent Advocacy Network, the Hub provides technical assistance, training to educators, administrators, families, and community organizations across the state. And what do? We engage. We're working directly with selected school districts, doing individualized support, and we are statewide, providing information and training via our workshops and webinars with the goal to assist the development and implementation of effective systemic family engagement practices that lead to improved student outcomes. I encourage you, if you have an interest of partnering with the New Jersey Family Engagement Hub, please visit our website so that we can connect and explore those opportunities for partnership. And now, over to Kim.
Thank you, Jeanette. So let's talk a little bit about SPAN. SPAN Parent Advocacy Network, that is the parent center for the state of New Jersey. And we are all about providing information, technical assistance, resources, and support for families and professionals and anyone who is interested in the healthy development and education of children to enable our kids to become fully participating and contributing members of community and society. So we have over 45 programs that covers everything from education, health, mental health, human services, juvenile justice, childcare. We extend to over 40 national, regional, and local programs, and we encourage you to visit our website at spanadvocacy.org to learn more about what we do. So today we're talking about mental health. And we are the statewide family engagement project for New Jersey. So we are always coming from the perspective of family engagement. And when we're talking about being prepared for a mental health crisis and navigating that process of schools and home and our kids and helping them to be supported, it's about promoting the relationship building. And that relationship building is the foundation for trust. So if we are prepared as a village, and it takes a village to raise our children, if we are prepared for a mental health crisis, then that would be a key to strengthening the partnerships between educators, families, and the community. And having a clear, well-communicated crisis plan for yourself at home and for school is foundational. So what is mental health? Well, according to the definition from the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life and realize their abilities, learn well, work well, and contribute to their community. So it's intrinsic and instrumental value, and it is integral to our well-being. So when it comes to our children, and as adults, we know that we have a lot of our minds, and sometimes the ability to process emotions and feelings can result in behaviors. So for our kids, we have to be really mindful. We have to be vigilant and look out for those signs of crisis, whether that is a sudden change in behavior, withdrawing from activities, shifting from their normal self, not interacting with their friends, families, not doing the fun sports or hobbies that they once loved. If they are changing their energy levels, becoming maybe lethargic or becoming agitated, you have to be mindful and say, okay, is something happening with their mental health? What about changes in their daily functioning? Are they struggling to get out of bed? No longer taking care of their personal hygiene? Is their performance at school dropping? These can be subtle but important clues. Intense emotional distress, like outbursts, these can actually be a manifestation of their inability to cope with normal life stressors. So they might constantly seem overwhelmed with feelings of sadness, anxiety, or panic. And of course, there are critical signs. If you have a child that seems to having some kind of self-harm, hurting themselves, suicidal ideations, and we know, this is some tough language, but, they say that you should ask, are you okay? Do you feel like you want to hurt yourself? It's a difficult conversation, but we as parents have to make sure that we are able to engage with those hard questions and pay close attention so that they may not feel as if they have support. They may not know that they can talk. Sometimes behavior can be a cry for attention or a plea for help. And having any kind of self-injurious behaviors like cutting, it's a clear intervention that immediate needed intervention is needed. And then, of course, if you have a child that has any kind of mental health diagnoses, whether it's psychotic symptoms, whether they are having hallucinations, hearing voices, seeing things that are not there, having fixed false beliefs. Are they not really wanting to understand what reality is? They're being resistant to reason. As parents and as educators, we have to use our what we see and what we understand. Trust your gut. If you feel something is wrong, ask, get some help, get an evaluation. We are not always the experts in our children. And sometimes our instincts can be a powerful tool. And all of these different crisis signals as stress and despair, fear, depression, anxiety, we have to be ready to take action quickly and decisively. And a big part of that is knowing what options you have in terms of resources. And within the state of New Jersey, there are many wonderful available options. One that everyone knows about, hopefully, is mobile response. So this is where if you have a child that is struggling and having extreme crisis or emergency at home, they can be called. They come to the home. The number you call is the 988 hotline to access mobile response, and they can send counselors or social workers. They come to the home or they come to the school. They specialize in de-escalation and stabilization. So they will assess the situation. They will then determine a safety plan, and then they will make a decision about what kind of appropriate care or intervention is needed. Calling mobile response is a really great option because sometimes that can avoid the unnecessary emergency room or police involvement. And so you can call your county's dedicated mental health hotline, that 988 hotline, and mobile response is available 24/7. And then Perform Care or your CMO. And you can access Perform Care services through your county's family support organization. And this is a wonderful resource for any child that is struggling at home. So if you've got a kid at home, they're having behaviors, you're unable to manage it, even if you have a child that is experiencing anxiety about going to school, you can call Perform Care. They come to the home. They can provide at-home clinical therapy. They can also provide at-home ABA therapy. But when it comes to a crisis situation, if you are already involved with Perform Care services, you call your CMO, your case manager, and they can help support and coordinate what would be the next steps. And then also having family counselors or family therapists. And for those who are not aware, there is a wonderful organization called NAMI. That's the National Alliance for Mental Illness. NAMI has NAMIs available in every county of the state, and they can provide support. They can provide family counselors that can work with the family. They call you, they follow up, they check in. So, even if you don't have the answers for a situation, and when we are in crisis, when we are struggling as parents, and it's everything is happening at once, and our blood rushes to our head, and you're stressed out, it's really hard to know all of the answers. So lean on the available resources. And then, of course, that brings us to our village of family and friends. So make sure that you have an established personal support, people that you have made some form of agreement with in the event of a crisis, so they can be present, so they can help with any logistics. So simply, to have someone you can talk with. Always plan beforehand. Know who you call and what you share with them. Because when crisis happens, we want to access our village. So let's say that you have a kid at home and a crisis is unfolding. Your child is a danger to themselves or a danger to others. And of course, our first call that everyone thinks of is 911. And of course, 911 is for immediate and life-threatening danger. But 988 is that number for emotional distress and support. So when you're making a call and looking for help, language is important. And I know that it's crisis, but you want to make sure that you are communicating all of the information that that person needs in order to respond appropriately. So 988 connects you with a trained crisis counselor who has experience, they understand mental health, you want to be able to give them the information and the facts. This is a mental health crisis. Say it immediately, because this immediately flags that situation for responders. It allows them to adjust their approach from standard protocol to a more sensitive and de-escalating protocol. Communicate the information about that child. How old are they? What has happened? What were the circumstances leading up to that situation? For example, for the last 2 hours, John has been screaming and throwing items. He's not threatened to hurt himself or others, but he's breaking things. Or Johnny has been hitting people and we are in danger. Is there a weapon involved? What part of the home are they located? Are there any diagnoses on the table? It's important that they know whether it's autism, whether it's ADHD, ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder, bipolar, schizophrenia. Do they have a history of crisis? Make sure that the responder on the phone is aware of what they are walking into. Give them a brief history so that they can support your child appropriately. And if any needed accommodations need to be communicated, keep that in mind as well. For example, you've got a kid who is on the spectrum, who is triggered by sound or triggered by loud voices, or would need to have a male figure or a female figure present. Let them know ahead of time so that this situation could be handled to meet the needs of your child. And now let's talk about screeners, because when you have someone evaluating a crisis situation, people are not aware that there's actually a person, a title. I know that for myself, this was information I was not familiar with when I went through it. So a mental health screener. This is a clinical professional. He performs or she performs a preliminary assessment, and they determine the acuity and the level of care. So they're responsible for evaluating the immediate needs. They assess risk. For example, is this person a danger to themselves, a danger to others? They facilitate what happens next, whether it's going to the hospital, whether it's therapy. They try to determine the most appropriate treatment setting, whether it's an inpatient psychiatric unit, an outpatient program, crisis stabilization services. That screener is a critical point of contact. So, as stated before, making sure they know the situation, the immediate triggers, the relevant history, whether there are any medications, what are the dosages, and of course, for educators, if this is a student, knowing if there's an IEP or a 504, that this is vital information for responders. And of course, the screeners conduct a crisis assessment. They will ask specific and targeted questions so that they can understand the needs. They are trained to be calm and empathetic. They help to stabilize that individual in crisis. And of course, they create that opportunities for interventions and provide immediate support and the level of care that is needed. So when we are at home with our child in crisis, make sure that you have a plan. And we'll talk a bit about that later on, but making sure that you are aware of all of the resources and information. You've got it listed, the hotline for crisis, the county regional center, your local county mental health administrator, your NAMI chapter, any youth services, the doctor's phone number, the therapist. And of course, if you are in a situation where you've called crisis, you may be going to the hospital, making sure that you have gathered all of the information, paperwork that you need. And hopefully you have this electronically, so you don't have to go grab papers, put it into a file, into some Google Drive that you can access easily, or search it in your emails. But having any legal documents that are required, information about diagnosis, information about medications, information about any previous visits to crisis or hospitals, if appropriate, power of attorney or guardianship. Make sure you have your ID. Yes, people forget their ID. You're going to the hospital, you need your ID. Have that insurance card accessible quickly. Any behavioral health services, because sometimes your insurance company will assign a behavioral health team. You may have a nurse that's working with you, a case manager. So that would also be helpful. And then, of course, prepping the bag. Yes, pack your bag and have it ready. We know when our kids are escalating. And sometimes you will not have time to pack that bag. So if you're in a situation when you've got a kid that is having a pattern of behaviors, that they are struggling over a series of days or weeks, or you've had that situation happen in the past, prep, have all of your paperwork ready as stated, have that in a folder, have it in a file. Make sure that you have all of the contacts listed and do those calls. Organize yourself. That it's what it's like having an action plan. Who do you call first? Do you need to call a babysitter? Do you need to call the aunt, the uncle, the grandparents, your friends, someone to watch the dog, the CMO, the therapist? Calling the hospital. Do you know where you're going? And we're going to get to that in a second. Having your bag packed. And for those of us who've been in the circumstances of being in the ER, and of course, if you have kids, you've been to an ER, it's cold. So regardless of what time of year it is, pack an extra sweater, pack a blanket, pack one of those nice, soft, squishy toys, right? Make sure you have that phone charger, your headphones. If you have to work the computer, extra socks, pack snacks, food, extra water, because remember, if you're in there, you may not be able to get out to go get food, and you need sustenance, right? And you may not be there at the time of day that the hospital will have the breakfast and the lunch and the dinner. As we know, it takes place within very specific windows, or they may have food at the hospital that you don't eat if you are vegetarian or vegan or gluten-free. All these things you want to have ready just ahead of time, just snacks ready to grab. And yes, choosing the ER. Choosing an ER can be a very important decision if you are dealing with a mental health crisis, because not all ERs are the same. Now, let's be clear. You can go to any hospital because every hospital emergency room is prepared for any situation. However, you might want to consider choosing a hospital that is a designated psychiatric screening center, because there are regional screeners in every county, and they may have more staffing. They may have more of the trained professionals. Even if it's a hospital that is a crisis stabilization center that you are aware of, that you would prefer your child to be in, little tip, you go to that emergency room. Because if you go to an emergency room and they evaluate your child and they determine that they're going to admit them, they will have to see if they have available beds. And if they do not have an available bed at that hospital, then they will find a hospital in the region that does. So certainly, if it's a specific crisis hospital, they may prioritize your child on their waiting list. But hospital transfers are pretty common. They're part of ensuring appropriate care. It's about finding available beds. And then making sure that you are going to a hospital that takes your insurance, right? Some hospitals are in network for your insurance plan. However, if your hospital that you are in is not in network, or if you need to transfer your student to a different hospital that is not in network, the social worker can contact the insurance company and they can do a waiver where that insurance company will waive their insurance and allow for that transfer to take place and cover there. Now, of course, things that we don't always think about is the hospital itself. Are you familiar with it? Is it a hospital you have experience with? Is the food good? Do they have a specific visitor policy that works for your schedule? Because some allow visits every day, some allow visits only on weekends, some allow 4-hour windows where either parent can come, some limit it to only one. So do your research ahead of time, because when the emergency ambulance comes to the home, you can actually tell them, say, hey, I would prefer if you take my child to this specific hospital. That is my preference. And most of the time they will listen, right? And then, of course, there are lots of facilities. We are going to be providing a list of different hospital facilities within the state of New Jersey that will be available in the Google Drive once you complete the survey. So earlier we talked about power of attorney and guardianship. And for those who are not familiar, it's because age matters. So if you have a student, a child that is under the age of 18, then of course you, the parent, you're completely in charge. You get all communications about the treatment, all the updates. You can make decisions. You can be present in the room. You can stay there with them. You know, this is all part of that process. However, Once your child reaches 18, age of majority, they are an adult. They have full autonomy. That means that unless you have consent from that 18-year-old, and depending on the crisis situation, you may or may not receive consent from your 18-year-old, then it would be helpful if prior to that escalation, that situation, that you would have some document at hand that was created and agreed upon, such as a power of attorney, a psychiatric advance directive, or mental health power of attorney. It'd have to be notarized. Your young adult would sign it, you would sign it, and you will have that document and make sure that you bring it with you to the hospital, because then it will give consent and permission so that you can be part of that process, which means have that conversation early. So what do crisis hospitalizations do? A lot of people do not realize that what a crisis hospitalization does is they stabilize and then they release. That's it. There are some hospitals that will do treatment, and this is where making sure that you are doing your research ahead of time is important, because you don't want to land somewhere and then suddenly not want to have your child there anymore, right? So make sure that you are aware that for the most part, the goal and the purpose of crisis hospitalizations is to stabilize that young person or young adult. And once they are stable, once it is determined that they are no longer a danger to themselves or a danger to others, then they are discharged or released if it's the emergency room. So let's talk a bit about hospitalizations. And we talked about the information you bring, making sure you have all of the treatment records and so forth. But the process, the protocols, it can be overwhelming. You're getting doctors and nurses and social workers. So make sure you have some kind of notebook, or you can use your smartphone and write down notes as they are speaking, because it can be a lot. If you have questions, write them down. If you think of information that is relevant and appropriate that will help them in that treatment or the decisions that they're making, write that down. And of course, staying connected. So attend any kind of visiting hours. They will have family meetings. There'll be a social worker that will be assigned to you, and you will have the opportunity to share as much information as needed. Sometimes it's therapy sessions. Sometimes they have engagement opportunities. Make sure that you're also asking for copies of everything. Evaluations. Ask for evaluations if you need to get some done. That really is an opportunity when you have a child that is hospitalized, and they can do a psychiatric evaluation. They can do all the blood work. They can really see what is happening, what is triggering that situation. And of course, know what all the rules are in the hospital, what happens with belongings. We talked about visitor policies. What are the communication protocols? Who is your point person? Who you speak with? That social worker is a resource. So they will explain patient rights. They will explain how and when they communicate. They have team meetings every morning. They can also link you to community supports. And then also, please remember to take care of yourself within this whole process. Self-care is key, because we cannot be there for our kids unless we are taking care of ourselves as well. Find rest. Seek support. Call a friend. Make sure that, you are even prepping at home and taking that time to change your mindset so you can be recuperated and revived and restored and ready for what happens next. And then, of course, once your young person is discharged, make sure that you are fully aware of what happens with the discharge plan. They meet with you. They have a document with a discharge plan. And really, you want to use that opportunity to discuss and ask any questions, any concerns about what happens next. Here I've got listed a number of different terms of options that can happen once a young person has been discharged from a crisis, a mental health crisis stabilization hospital. Sometimes they do IOP, which is intensive outpatient, and that therapy can be at certain therapy centers, counseling centers. Sometimes it's 5 days a week, 4 days a week, 3 days a week for 4 or 5 hours a day. That means that your child will be at home, and then they go to IOP sessions, just like school, and they can incorporate education and learning as part of that, but they will be going to therapy. Then there is partial hospitalization. So that means it's a day program with structured therapy and support. Then there's PACT, which is the Program for Assertive Community Treatment. And this is where a counselor is assigned and there's a team support. And this is for when there's some serious mental illness, typically for adult kids, but they can really do a lot in terms of medication management, daily assistance for living within the community. They can help them with school. They can help them with work. And then there is something called involuntary outpatient commitment. So if you have an 18-year-old that has been hospitalized, and I didn't mention this earlier on, so I'm going to bring this up here. Because they are an adult, if they are in that hospital for more than 7 days, typically the insurance company will require that they do a reassessment or determination as to why they are still there. And so they will have court at hospital when you've got an 18-year-old, 18 and above, in the hospital, and they get an attorney that's assigned to them, and they will debate and justify that young adult staying within the hospital system for more than a week or 10 days. So, and that's called an involuntary hospitalization if they are staying longer. Now, once they are discharged, there is also something called an involuntary outpatient commitment. So this is where you have court-ordered outpatient care for individuals who have previously posed serious risk. And this ensures adherence to their medication. They follow up and they make sure that they're still doing well. So it's like getting that oversight that you got within the hospital, but it's happening outside of the hospital. And honestly, that is really, really helpful for families who don't want to be that parent and also have to be that person managing that young adult, because as we know, it is a lot and you want to be there for your child in that role. And then, of course, when it comes to discharge, medication management is key. So all of these other listed programs can really help with, monitoring and managing of medication, knowing how much medication, if it's oral medication, making sure they're taking it the right time on a daily basis. Sometimes you can even get a monthly injection. Yes, that is an option, which really helps if you're struggling just to stay on that regimen of medication. And then, of course, all of the community support services that are available. We already talked about Perform Care and talked about mobile response and NAMI, but making sure that having that support outside of hospitals so they can sustain and maintain their mental health. So now let's talk about what happens when crisis occurs at school. When it comes to school, for educators, there's a definition under the New Jersey Department of Education memo, that guidance on psychiatric clearance, where administrators can seek to remove a student from school pending psychiatric clearance. And so that means if you have a child is at school and there has been a situation where they seem to be a danger to themselves or others, it's an emergency, there's an immediate mental health crisis, the school's priority will always be safety first. And each school district has developed an emergency protocol in the event of crisis. That is a policy, that it's written, that you can read, that you should be able to access, and the school district is mandated to follow it. And the steps of those often means involving some kind of emergency medical services. Of course, there is staff at the school that are trained to respond to a mental health crisis at school. Part of that process should involve contacting the parents immediately. And an assessment is determined at school whether they need to take the next steps. If they do determine that your student requires psychiatric clearance, the family should receive a letter explaining all of those steps, explaining that that student needs to be evaluated by a psychiatric professional, and it should be done at the district expense. It should be transparent. It should be communicated in writing so that families know what to expect. And they can organize and schedule with a psychiatric doctor to do that evaluation at the district expense. But many families often opt to go to an emergency room that very evening and get that evaluation done. And it is important that they get a very specifically worded letter, which is their child's ticket to return to school, if you will. And that letter needs to state that that student is medically and psychologically cleared to return to the general school environment, and that they no longer pose a danger to themselves or to others. It needs to be signed. It needs to be written on an office official document with an office stamp. And of course, it needs to be done from someone who is a specialist in that area, a medical professional, treating psychiatrist or clinical psychologist who is capable of doing medical mental health clearance. And then once that letter has been received by the family, they then communicate that letter to the school, whether they email it, whether you bring the hard copy, always keep copies. And then the school schedules what's called a return to school meeting. And this is a crucial part. It's a mandatory meeting that involves the parents, The student, if appropriate, the principal, the school nurse, the school counselor or case manager. And of course, this is not about rehashing the incident because you've got the document in hand, but it really is about discussing and implementing a return to school re-entry plan. So they review any doctor recommendations, discuss any necessary in-school supports or accommodations. They can then also discuss some kind of safety plan or crisis plan in the event that this happens again to ensure that all the parties are aligned so that everyone is on the same page and what the path forward is. And this meeting solidifies that commitment to student success. This meeting is about partnership and meets the tenets of our family engagement. And now I'm going to pass it over to Jeanette.
Thank you, Kim. So let's talk about prevention. When it comes to student well-being, our first line of defense isn't reaction. It's creating a safe, supportive school climate. That's where positive behavior interventions and supports, referred to as PBIS, comes in. It's a tiered system. Tiered 1, universal supports for all students. Tier 2, targeted help for small groups. And Tier 3, intensive individualized plans for high-risk behaviors. The stronger our PBIS framework, the fewer crises we'll face. It's about building those skills and relationships, not just handing out consequences. Crisis response starts with training. Every adult in the building, from teachers to bus drivers, needs up-to-date training. That includes recognizing early signs of distress, knowing school-wide protocols, practicing de-escalation techniques, and understanding roles during a crisis. Now for our students, we need to convey that they have tools and strategies that they can apply daily at school. So the first step in any crisis is pausing. Listen to what your body and mind are telling you. Are your thoughts racing? Is your heart pounding? Are you isolating yourself? These are crucial clues. Observe your patterns. Have a self-awareness. Has your sleep changed? Are you losing interest in things you usually love? Recognize these signs early is what turns a potential crisis into a manageable challenge. Don't dismiss or minimize what you're feeling, but most importantly, acknowledge it. And also, look at your fellow peers. Are they okay? Seek a responsible adult. Self-care, we hear this often, is not a luxury. It's a foundation for mental stability. When stress builds up, our self-care often drops off, and that's when crisis can start. So you need to ask yourself, am I sleeping? Am I eating regular meals? Am I moving my body? Am I taking my medication? If the answer is no to any of those, that's where you want to start. Focus on the basics, not the big stuff. Even 5 minutes of deep breathing or drinking a glass of water counts. Reaching out takes a lot of courage, but you don't have to carry this alone. If you feel safe and comfortable, your family is always your best first line of support. They love you and know you best. If family isn't an option, or if the crisis occurs at school, turn to your educator. This includes a teacher that you trust, a school counselor, a school social worker, even the school nurse. Their job is to help you and connect you to the school's professional mental health team. Remember, they're legally and ethically required to maintain privacy and act in your best interest. And professional help is absolutely normal. It's effective and it's available. Therapy is safe. Confidential space to talk. It's having a personal coach for your mind. It's beyond therapy. Get to know your school's programs and community options. Does your school have a peer-to-peer support group? Is there a local youth program focused on mental wellness? The more you know about the available resources, the less scary and overwhelming the path to getting better becomes. And this is your superpower. When you're feeling okay, take 10 minutes to create a simple action plan. It should be written down and easily accessible. So what would go in that plan? 1, contact numbers, 988 Lifeline, and one trusted friend. Coping skills. These things that calm you down, for example, listening to music, a 5-minute walk, hugging a pet, journaling, whatever that looks like for you. Safe places. Where you can go to be alone if you feel overwhelmed. For example, the library, a quiet corner of your room. And finally, remember to be kind to yourself. You're doing the best you can with what you have. Mental health crisis can feel endless, but that is the illness talking. It's not the truth. The truth is that change is around the corner, and every single choice you make to ask for help, to breathe, or to prioritize your well-being moves you closer to a better and more stable day. You are resilient, and brighter days are ahead. You just need to keep moving forward. And for our families, the first thing that's essential is creating a supportive home environment. And how do you do that? Your home should feel safe, and it also should feel stable. Use routines, calm down corners to reduce stress. Model positive behavior. Handle stress calmly. Kids learn by watching you. And oftentimes, when you're very reactive, that also triggers the child as well. So be very aware. Open communication. Ask how they are feeling. Use I statements and validate emotions. And the most important thing is just really normalizing conversations about mental health, as Kim alluded earlier in the presentation. Spot those warning signs and act. Watch for those changes in sleep, mood, and behavior. Use your action plan. Notice, respond, get help. 988, mobile response, 911. Be resource ready. List 3 key contacts, whether it's a school counselor, mobile response, a therapist. Keep info visible and saved. Create a family action plan. Include warning signs, coping tools, emergency contacts, safety steps. Review and practice regularly. Recovery after crisis. Continue therapy. Consider structured programs. Support groups. Adjust care as needed. And some additional tips, which is really important. Promote self-care. Sleep. Hygiene is so important. Be present at school events. Encourage healthy routines and social outlets. Consider a pet or a plant for emotional support. Know when to seek professional help, but always have a plan and know the 988 hotline. And now to our community partners. Providing programming and activities such as after-school programs and weekend sports. Give your community students a space and place where they can socialize and have fun. to help them distress in an informal and supportive environment. And this also is helpful to families in the form of respite. It provides parents a break, allows them to recharge and renew, so they're better able to tend the needs of their children, who are then better equipped to have each day with less stress and less trauma. And yes, community, providing mental health resources and support for the community at large is essential. It's critical. Make therapy and support a value. Advertise mental health resources, make it a common place and a practice. Fostering safe and inclusive community spaces, do your part. Keep the streets positive, safe, clean, so kids can walk home without fear or danger. Provide security, secure your neighborhood. Fill in the gaps of need, food, clothing, shelter, medical. Help families with their basic needs to reduce that stress and anxiety and impact on our children. Show up to school events, volunteer your time. Let our kids know that their community is supporting them. So when they walk down that street, they recognize you, and it fosters feelings of belonging. It creates feelings of a well-being. Provide workforce development for mental health professionals. Provide accessible mental health services and resources. Encourage collaboration between schools, families, and other community organizations. Be in partnership. Advocate for policy and funding for mental health at a statewide and local level. Host mental health workshops and seminars and stress management programs. And mental health crisis. Here are some critical resources, but take the time to know all of the myriad of mental health resources that are available throughout our state. We have provided a list of resources in the shared drive, and the New Jersey Department of Health has a guide to mental health crisis. So we encourage you to visit their website. And now it's time to create your action plan. This is a call to action. If you think you need one, and even if you think you don't, you need to plan ahead. Be prepared and create a crisis action plan. There's an example of one included, and it's in the drive of resources that you'll be able to access once you filled out our survey. It's an outline, it's a loose template, but make it your own. Put it on your refrigerator, have it accessible within reach for any family member of your household, just in case. Email it to yourself, take a picture, put it in your drive. And our activity sheet offers quick practical tips for families with children in the elementary, middle, and high school. So this printable resource, along with many others, it covers camps, internships, programs across New Jersey, and it's available in our shared Google Drive. And you'll have access once you complete that survey. And here are some upcoming events. This evening, we have from 6 to 7, we have Mindful Decisions, Helping Kids Choose Wisely. It's a workshop series that is offered by our partners at SEL4NJ, Social Emotional Learning Alliance of New Jersey. And then there's a follow-up. There's a series to that, which will be Wednesday, November 19th from 6 to 7. And the facilitator is Erica Brenton, and she is absolutely outstanding. And this is very timely, so we encourage you to register. It's not too late. And now it's time to take a quick survey. We invite you to scan the QR code. We'll place the link in the chat and just take a moment to complete the survey. As you know, this feedback is essential for us to help continue to deliver valuable and engaging webinars. So we're going to give you about a minute. Thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time to fill out the survey. And now join us for our upcoming Lunch and Learn workshop. This is a part 2 series of our literacy offering, and this will be on Tuesday, November 25th from 12 to 1. This is part 2, which we will be covering policy, legislation, and early literacy in schools. Please be sure to register at our upcoming Lunch and Learn. And then our final webinar on December 9th from 11 to 12, we will be highlighting navigating digital tools for family communication. So be sure to join us. This will be our final webinar for the year, and we hope that you join us. And please be sure to share it with your other families and communities and constituents. This concludes a portion of our webinar. Thank you for joining us. Once again, we have the QR code. If you didn't have an opportunity to fill out the survey, we invite you to do that now. And you also can receive a certificate of completion. You just have to indicate that in the survey. Thank you for joining us. Remember to normalize these conversations, be aware, and we hope to see you next time here at the Hub. Have a great day.